Ready to take your favorite Wager Talk handicappers wherever you travel this football season? The Wager Talk TV app is now live for phones, tablets, smart TVs, and streaming platforms. Tune into your favorite shows like Wager Talk Today, Bet on It, and the Opening Line Report, plus browse through our extensive library of sports betting tips. Create your personal playlist of betting tip videos to help you prepare for the upcoming season, and set notifications to alert you when new content is added. Download the app for Apple, Android, Amazon, and Roku devices by searching for Wager Talk TV, or scan the QR code on your screen to join the winning conversation today.
Welcome into the best damn college football show out there. Drew Martin, Ralph Michaels, Robbie Veno breaking down 3 games, getting into the college football analysis. Pens up, boys. Ralph Michaels at Cal Sports LV. 5% play up and available. Wagertalk.com. Ralph, welcome in, buddy. How you feeling?
Good, guys. I know this is college football, and it's always awesome to talk college football with you guys every Wednesday, but I'll give a quick plug. NHL. Full disclosure, last year was my first year handicapping NHL. Not a hockey fan. Pay a little attention to the Golden Knights. Finished number 2 in win percentage just using systems, but I am on a 17-2 run on NHL 5% best bets. 17-2. So $35, grab it. And I'll even say this: don't buy the one play for 35. Get the one day all access for 39. I have 2 football games, an NBA game, and a college basketball play as well for today. A strong Wednesday card.
All right, guys, check them out. 5% play up and available. 17-2. Call it beginner's luck if you want to on the ice. I don't know, whatever it is. 17-2. It's paying some bills. So shout out to Ralph Michaels. He obviously knows his college football, which you're going to find out, but he's doing well in the NHL. 5% play up for tonight. We got Robbie Veno, guys. Speaking of doing well, on fire, 14-3, up over 80% in his 4% best bets. I'm sure he'll have one up this weekend in college football. Robbie, welcome in, man. How are you feeling?
I am doing good, Drew. How are you guys today? Our usual Wednesday hump day spot. Real quick, along with the 4% best bets, finally getting on a good roll here. I'll shout out college football, which had a really big weekend, continued through last night where we won in MAC action, but 10-4, last 14 plays, 71%, over 21 units return on investment. So college football rolling through this latter portion of the season currently, along with the 4% best bet. So let's keep that stuff going.
Absolutely, Robbie. Looking at it right now, your last 20 picks. Ohio, the Bobcats. We were lining up on that last night in action. Again, going tonight. So good call there, Robbie's. But going from the MAC to the SEC here, in a big one. The first game we're breaking down, guys, Georgia and Mississippi State, minus 16.5. That's the Bulldogs on the road in Starkville Saturday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 53.5 being the total. Ralph, this is a classic. The Georgia Bulls, I mean, I don't pay much attention to the rankings, but I'm guessing the number 1 ranked team in the country on the road. Tough place off of that big win. The Cowbells will be rocking. This is matchup handicap versus spot handicap, about as glaring as it gets. What are you thinking here in the battle of the Bulldogs?
Very astute, Drew, matchup versus situation. And I am not worried about the situation at all. You look at Georgia, this is not some team that flukily got up to number 1 and now has to worry about they're off this big win against Tennessee. This is the team that I think is 28-1 their last 29 games. Their only loss to Bama last year. And I think going on the road actually helps them. Getting at home, I wouldn't want to be laying. Let's say Mississippi State was at home and there was a 7 points difference and we were laying 24 at home. I'd be much less apt to do that than I am for them to go on the road where the Cowbells can keep them motivated. Now let's talk about the matchups you said. Well, we know Mississippi State likes to throw the ball around. Can Mississippi State run? Hell no. They're averaging 3.6 yards per carry. 13 yards against Auburn, 62 yards against Bama, 22 yards against Kentucky, against the Georgia team allowing 3.1 yards per carry. This Georgia D, the best in the country, they're holding foes to 154 yards per game, under what those teams average. and their offense doesn't get enough love. Their offense is actually number 4 in the country, gaining 130 yards per game more than their opponents normally allow. I talked about favoring Georgia on the road. Well, again, we've talked about this a couple times. When you travel, you can only take anywhere between 68 and 75 people, depending on what your conference allows for travel. So when you have Georgia in the third and fourth quarter on the roads, you still have your number 2s playing. What's Georgia going to do if they have a huge lead? They're going to run the ball. Well, Georgia rushes for 194 yards per game, 213 and 5.5 over the last 4 weeks. The worst 4 teams Mississippi State's faced that likes to run the ball, they allow 206 yards, 5.4 to LSU, 241, 5.5 to Arkansas, 239, 5.0 to Kentucky, 256 to 5.6 against Auburn. This is going to be on my card as a play. I gave it out as a best bet yesterday, so it will not be my best bet today, but this clearly is best bet worthy for me.
I like it, Ralph. Great breakdown. That's why I like this show, guys. Not only the analysis that Ralph gave, but just hearing two smart minds like Robbie Veno and Ralph Michaels that really know their college football. By the way, the best damn college football show out there, 3 o'clock Eastern time on Wednesdays. Wager Talk YouTube channel. Feel free to comment below in the reply section. Ralph, you brought up something I wasn't 100% in tune to. I was always under the impression the road teams could dress as many as they wanted. The only problem is they have to obviously pay for their travel and pay for their hotel. There's actually a rule that they can only bring a certain amount.
Yeah, home you could dress as many as you want. And sometimes right. Oklahoma used to dress 130 kids. So you could get fifth stringers playing on a blowout. But yes, conferences make road limits to the amount of key people you're allowed to take. I think the Pac-12 is the smallest with 68. Don't quote me on the number, but I think the Pac-12 has the fewest amount that they allow on their travel rosters.
Interesting. Okay, I like it, guys. Robbie Veno up next, man. Battle of Bulldogs, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock, I guess, local time, Starkville, Mississippi. Cowbells will be ringing. What are you thinking?
First, Drew, you sold yourself short. Let me throw yourself into there of strong college football minds. Don't just put me and Ralph in there. Throw yourself in there, too, because I can't bring any new points to what you two guys just said, because my note sheet is full of everything that you just said, but maybe I can enhance and drive home some of your points even further here. Let's start with Mississippi State and their offense. The top 3 defenses that they've played this season, LSU, Kentucky, and Alabama. Now, granted, all 3 of those games were on the road. Got to take that into consideration. This is Starkville. And Drew, when you started off by saying situational versus matchup or fundamental, I find that same divide in this game when I handicapped it. But versus those top 3 defenses that they faced this season, they scored 16, 17, and 6. They passed for 214, 203, and 231. 231 is not going to get it done against Georgia. And there's no saying they're going to get 231 because those 3 teams aren't as good defensively as Georgia is. Georgia's number 5 defense in the country. Those 3 sit anywhere between 1 and 43. Mississippi State's played a lot of bad defenses this year. If you take those results, you'll find that they lost by 10 points, by 15 points, by 24 points, 0-3 against the spread, 3-0 to the under because their offense was ineffective. Situationally, can Georgia give the same exact effort that they brought to the table last week against Tennessee in that highly publicized game? Probably not. It's not at home. There's not the same hype for this one. Like you said, Drew, it's a night game in Starkville loaded with cowbells, but Georgia probably doesn't have to bring that effort that they brought last week. It's only their 3rd true road game all season. They've played a couple of neutral sites. Here's what I have for Mississippi State matchup concerns. Can they protect Will Rogers? As Ralph mentioned, their non-existent running game doesn't help protect Will Rogers. The only thing that does protect him is the offensive line holds up long enough for his quick decision-making to get rid of the ball. If you're Georgia, it's the opposite style of pass defense that you played last week. Last week, you protected against deep verticals. This week, they probably sit within 12 yards of the line of scrimmage and go after the passer and wait for these short routes and just start tackling people. Mississippi State's only allowed 19 sacks on the entire season, but 9 of those came against those 3 previously mentioned opponents, which were the best defenses they played. That's nearly half of their sacks allowed against LSU, Kentucky, and Alabama. Cap that off with the fact that Mississippi State gave up 5 more sacks to Auburn last week. Could spell a little bit of trouble for Will Rogers here if the Georgia pass rush comes to play, because they had 6 themselves against Hendon Hooker last week. So that matchup there, guys, pass protection of Mississippi State, pass rush of Georgia, crucial in this particular contest. I also wonder if the Mississippi State team will wear down over the course of the second half. If you take a look back at those 3 games that I mentioned earlier, LSU, Kentucky, and Bama, against LSU, they lost the second half 24-3. Against Kentucky, they lost the second half 24-14. Against Bama, they tied 6-6, but their offense went away. Georgia just keeps rolling people out in waves, and as Ralph mentioned, there's only so many waves that you can bring with you onto a road game. So with Mississippi State playing so fast and possibly having a bunch of 3-and-outs, you wonder if they wear down over the course of the second half as Georgia beats on them. The other side of that coin, if we look at first half, guys, can Mississippi State even avoid a first half Georgia onslaught? Georgia, in the last 3 weeks, last 3 games, they've outscored their opponents 80-9. They're fast. They hit you hard. They can wear you out. There's a lot of problems fundamentally here for Mississippi State. I would say you can build a very small situational case for Mississippi State. You can build a huge fundamental case for Georgia. My power rating said Georgia by 17. The line's 16.5, so right on the money there. If I had to, I would be on Georgia. I just don't think that Mississippi State can chase, even though they're a passing team. I don't think they'll be able to chase in this game. Some would say that at plus 17, backdoor is always open for a pass-happy team, and that is possible. But to Ralph's point, this Georgia offense right now, and really you can put an exclamation point next to the pass offense, and Bowers, the tight end, gets all the credit, but this wide receiving core is real good too. So I would say if I had to, I would lean Georgia.
All right,
Hey,
looking
Drew,
towards the Bulldogs, the Georgia side. Yeah, go ahead, Ralph.
I tried to Google real quick. The only one I found is the Big Ten 2 years ago actually went up from 70 to 74, but I could not find a quick article with all the limits. But it's all in that 68 to 75 range for the conferences. When it's a non-conference, there's still a limit, but there's a specific limit for all conference games.
Like it, Ralph. Guys, next game up, Purdue and Illinois in the Big Ten. Robbie, we'll come to you first. 44.5 being the total. Low total here, minus 6.5 at most shops looking at the Wager Talk Live odds screen. That's the Illini in Champaign. What are you liking here, Robbie?
Well, let's start off by saying the Big Ten West race is still wide open. The Illinois lost last week to Michigan State, despite the fact that Michigan State had so many suspensions due to that tunnel incident with Michigan, and Illinois still failed to win that game, even though they massively outgained Michigan State. I'm going to try and make some points here why you might want to fade Illinois and play on Purdue. Illinois has outgained their opponent in every game this season. The lowest total yard edge that Illinois has had all season long is 86, plus 86 against Indiana. Otherwise, on average, they gain 181.2 more yards than their opponent. That's a drastically large number. Only Indiana has gained more than 294 total yards this season against Illinois. Is it because Illinois' defense is so great, or is it because Illinois' opposition offensively has stunk? And I'll make the case that the opposition offensively has stunk. These opposing offenses are very, very questionable. Start with the fact that Illinois has not faced a top 50 total yardage offense this season. This will be the first. I think Purdue ranks 16. The highest ranked offense they've played all season long, that being Illinois, is Minnesota. Minnesota sits at 59th, and they're extremely one-dimensional, right? They hand the ball off. Very rarely do they ask Tanner Morgan to do much. So Purdue's the exact opposite of that with a passing game. We'll get into that right now because Illinois has faced 0 top 50 pass offenses. The 55th ranked Indiana team is the best passing offense that Illinois has seen all season long. Again, Illinois' defensive statistics look wonderful until you start looking at who they've played here. Indiana is the only team, when I mentioned earlier that only one team has gained more than 294 against the Illinois defense, that team is Indiana. They gained 362, and 330 of it came through the air. Pretty alarming because Aiden O'Connell and the Purdue pass offense certainly is better than Indiana's. Indiana won that game, guys, 23-20. The pass offense, 330 yards against Illinois, beat Illinois 23-20, and we know what Indiana's turned out to be here. Purdue's defense has been pretty sturdy against better competition. I mean, they only allow 355.6 per game. They only allow 118.5 on the ground, and keep in consideration that when in their crossover games with the Big Ten East, they play Penn State and Maryland. Those are two really good offenses, and then non-conference, they played Syracuse in those 3 games, and 2 of those were on the road. Important because this one's on the road here as well. Against Penn State, they lose by 4, very late in the game. Against Maryland, they win by 2, and against Syracuse, they only lose by 3. Again, very, very late in the game. So they've been extremely competitive against good teams on the road. Purdue, the last 2 weeks, their numbers look bad. They've been hurt by a bad turnover margin. They've been takeaways. They've had 1, turnovers. They had 5. So -4 turnover margin against Wisconsin and Iowa. And both of those teams ran pretty well against Purdue. That would be your concern, your red flag here, because Illinois is going to want to run the football under Brett Bielema. I still think they're sturdy enough to hold up. They actually outgained Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago, 431 to 381. Jeff Brom might be, I've said this for a few years now, when I watch his interviews, I think he's probably the most honest head coach out there. He very, very, very rarely uses coach speak or doesn't tell you exactly what's on his mind, exactly what his team's strength is, exactly what his team's problem is. If you want to know, he's going to tell you. And right now, he's trying to rally the troops here for this game. I think that the +6.5 is way too much to give them against the Illinois team that, to tell you the truth, guys, the numbers look impressive, but I question what they've been built on. So give me Purdue +6.5.
Ralph, Robbie makes some good points here towards the underdog. Boilermakers, competitive on the road, catching near a touchdown. Are you thinking the underdog's barking in Champaign?
You know what? This is one of the games where I went back and forth, so I'm really not going to give you much of an opinion on this game. You know, Illinois, you can only stop who you've played. I mean, let me point out some numbers. At home, they're allowing 42.4% completions. Now, granted, you played Wyoming, Virginia, Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan State. But still, 42.4% is an unheard of number. They're allowing 46.1% on the season. I'm going to lean with this. Winds are 19 to 20 miles an hour on Friday. They're 16 to 18 miles on Saturday. This game's early, Saturday at 11 a.m. I think Purdue, with that pass defense, is going to try to establish the rush. Yes, we think of Purdue as a pass-happy team, but they had 34 carries against Maryland, 47 against Nebraska, 33 against Wisconsin, and 31 against Iowa. I'm actually going to go first quarter under here. I think Purdue goes basic. I think Illinois can stay with them early when they're in their original game plan. I think Illinois is going to try to run the ball. I think we're going to have a little bit of wind. And while I don't trust under for the full game, I'm going to expect a slow start here and go under the total first quarter.
Big Ten action there from Ralph Michaels. Robbie Veno breaking it down as well. The dog might be barking there in the Boilermakers. Huge shout out to the chat box. Everybody joining us live. C. James in the house. We got RJ as well. Jessica, all of you, welcome in. Please smash that like button if you're liking the content, and feel free to reply below. Let us know what you're betting. Where you agree, where you disagree, all is welcome. Any questions we'll try to answer on next week's show, as well as we head to the Big 12 for the last game we're breaking down here for the show. Arguably the best one, at least competitively priced game, 7 o'clock Eastern start here in Waco, Texas. Ralph, coming back to you first. We're seeing Kansas State at Baylor. Baylor -2.5, 53.5 being the total. You liking anything in Saturday night Big 12 action, Ralph?
Again, another game where I'm not going to have a strong opinion on because of this. I think Baylor has impressed me more this season watching the games. Now, I haven't watched every minute of every Baylor game. I haven't watched every minute of every Kansas State game. But when I look what Blake Shapen has done, 67%, the 13-6 ratio, a running game that's averaging over 200 yards per carry and 4.7. Sounds similar to Kansas State. Both teams average 40 to 45 rushes. Both teams averaging between 210, 218 yards per game. Baylor 4.7, Kansas State 5.5. Some of Kansas State was non-conference when they rushed for 300 yards against South Dakota. And then 343 they put up against Texas Tech, where Baylor threw the ball more against TT. So then I look at the defenses, and both teams statistically are top 30 relative to what their opponents average. And again, you look at Kansas State and you might say, well, this defense has struggled, against TCU and against Texas. Well, they have. They had 495 against TCU, 466 against Texas, but their red zone defense kept them in the game, allowing 34 points at home against Texas. The TCU game got away from them a little bit, allowing 38. I think it's a feeling out game. I think both teams want to run the ball, and I'm going to lean with the under again the first half. Neither team wants to pass first. So you're going to go through the first quarter setting the pace. Unless you get behind, you're going to stick to your game plan. And with this kind of game, two defenses that have rush defenses that are decent, 148 4.1 for K-State and 127 3.7 for Baylor. You want to run the ball, decent defenses that do it, quarterbacks that don't make horrible mistakes. I mean, Martinez with a 6-1 ratio, Will Howard with a 6-1 ratio. Under first half for me in this matchup.
All right, looking towards the under early. Guys, this is my best bet, but interested in your opinion first here, Robbie. What do you like in Big 12? Baylor hosting K-State.
Well, my power ratings like Baylor a little bit. I show Baylor -5, numbers 2.5. Come down a little bit, I think mostly because Adrian Martinez is in this game. But let me build the case here, Drew, for this total of 53.5 being set on reputation rather than what's happened this season. Kansas State's played 6 Big 12 games. 4 of those 6 Big 12 games have totaled 61 or more. That's over a touchdown more than what this total is set at. Every single Big 12 game Baylor's played has scored 55 or more. That's over the total that we're looking at. That's 10 out of the 12 games that these two teams have played in Big 12 play this season that have exceeded this number. Knee-jerk reaction, mechanical reaction, run right to the window and bet over 53.5 because odds makers haven't gotten either one of these teams right where total's concerned this year. However, the importance level of this game has grown. We're down to the 9th, 10th week of the season, 11th week of the season. And these two teams are positioning for a spot inside the Big 12 championship game. TCU, pretty sure they're going to be there. But then there's a 3-way logjam in second place. Baylor, Texas, Kansas State, all 3 6-3 overall, all 3 4-2 in conference. KSU actually now has a loss to Texas in that tiebreaker system. So for them, extremely important here to go on the road and beat Baylor. For Baylor, they'll play Kansas State now this Saturday, and then they'll play Texas in 2 weeks. So they basically control their destiny at this point in time. If they beat both teams, they're likely going to be the opponent of TCU inside that Big 12 game. So when games increase in importance, and when you have 2 head coaches like we have here in Aranda and Kleiman, who are defensive minded, you tend to think that maybe the game will slow down a little bit. Kansas State, for what it's worth, guys, it's just a different team this year offensively. They've scored 15 touchdowns outside the red zone. Who ever thought of Kansas State as explosive? But they're explosive. Between Deuce Vaughn, Adrian Martinez, and what they've put forth as results on the field this year, like I say, 15 touchdowns outside the red zone, that's quite a few. Baylor tends to not give a lot up. Something's got to give there. Ralph talked about Baylor's rush offense. It's been in full effect the last 3 weeks. I mean, they're just steamrolling people at this point in time. 231, 238, and 281 on the ground the last 3 weeks. I'm not so sure Kansas State can hold up against that. For a lot of reasons, I'm going to go ahead and play this game over 53.5 because I just don't think odds makers have gotten it right. And when we're, for the most part, the objective here is to pick at numbers and bet against what we think might be less than ideal numbers, take advantage of them. And I just think this 53.5 is proven throughout the season to be too small. Situation be what it is. I think we'll get more scoring than that, even if it does come second half. Just to mention real quick here, guys, the only 2 games that Kansas State did not play over 53.5 this year was a 10-9 against Iowa State, which, again, it's Iowa State. Believe it or not, Baylor went 31-24 with that team and got over this number of 53.5. But the other game for KSU was the 48-0 win against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, remember, that was the first game without Spencer Sanders. Their quarterback situation was a complete mess. If they had put anything on the board, they would have gone over 53.5 in that game. So I really think that's the way to go here. I like Baylor as well. I think at home, I think their defense and running game are a little bit better. Under a field goal at home seems to be a good way to go. But I'll play over 53.5 ahead of that.
Rob, Veno, we got Ralph as well. Guys, just quick question for you. We got Slow Jams asking, what's the quarterback situation for K-State? And Ralph, I know you touched on it in terms of 6-1, their touchdown to interception ratio. Does it really matter who's playing quarterback, in your opinion, for the Wildcats, Ralph?
Well, I still want Adrian Martinez. I mean, he is listed as the one this week in the depth chart. So you can expect Martinez back. But clearly for the experience level, you can look at stats all you want and say they're good. But if you're going to say to me, who do I want quarterbacking? I want Adrian Martinez.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to ask you because, one, I appreciate the question, Slow Jams, but also, I mean, against Oklahoma State and that 48-0 rout that Kansas State had, Rob, it was Will Howard that played and bringing up the touchdown to interception ratio. Does it matter to you and your power ratings on K-State?
I didn't make a real meaningful adjustment here, Drew, but I do think Adrian Martinez would be my choice just because he brings the added element. And again, I was talking about Kansas State explosive plays, touchdowns outside the red zone, and a lot of that due to the fact that you have to treat Martinez as an extra running back when he's on the field. So he brings that element that Baylor hasn't seen much this season. So if I'm trying to think in my head because I'd love to play head coach on video. I'm not on the sidelines, but I'd almost maybe split them a little bit. Baylor has to prep for everything here. Will Howard's the better thrower. Adrian Martinez the better runner, although Adrian Martinez's accuracy has improved this year. As a number one, I'd rather have Martinez. I don't know that it makes a huge deal in the power ratings at this point.
Drew, I'm going to give you 2 more numbers that exactly what Rob talked about. You look at Adrian Martinez. He's rushed for 617 yards, 5.8. Will Howard, 14 carries, 34 yards, 2.4 when he's trying to scramble. You look at percentage. Martinez is higher, 63 to 59.6. But Will Howard, stronger arm, they throw the ball down the field. Will Howard actually a 167 quarterback rating compared to 132. With a 9.1 YPA compared to 7.0. So he's getting 2 extra yards per attempt because of that strong arm, taking more shots downfield than Martinez. Martinez with a higher percent. Why? Because you need a spy when you have Martinez, so you have one less person in pass defense.
Sure, great point as well, because sometimes completion percentage isn't the all-important thing, particularly if it's like a different skill set from the quarterback, so they're throwing the ball down the field more, and therefore you get more bang for your buck.
Mississippi State's the perfect example, right? Mississippi State's going to dink and dunk, and they basically hand the ball off to receivers. That's not a pass game. I mean, you look at Georgia, Rob brought it up. What they faced with Georgia was guys that were NFL-type speed, throwing the ball down the field 30, where you have to have cornerbacks that are fast, make decisions, and not get pass interference penalties. People don't get PIs against Mississippi State because they pass the ball within 2 or 3 yards of the line and then run the ball. You just got to be able to tackle them. So exactly a great point. The YPA to me is very important when you're looking. If you only look at percentage without the YPA, you're not doing the quarterback justice.
Great point
and
there.
Drew,
Ralph Michaels
real
at
quick,
Cal
Drew,
Sports
again,
LV, Robbie Veno at Rob Veno Sports. Go ahead, Rob.
yeah, real quick, again, it begs to the point that will Chris Kleiman play both of these guys? You need to put Baylor on their heels. Each guy has a different strength. Sometimes when you bring one quarterback in and take the other one out, it's a dead giveaway. Oh, now we're going to throw the ball, and the defense can read that. But I think that these two guys are diversified enough that Will Howard can still run an RPO-style pass game and make it a little bit difficult for Baylor in their personnel grouping. So we'll see what happens. But I think Ralph and I are both on the same page here. We would start Adrian Martinez. We would prefer Adrian Martinez. He just brings that explosive element to the game with his legs. And, you have to account for that.
So, Rob, you at the head coach, are you going to line up Deuce Vaughn and Martinez in the back with Will Howard lining up, and then Martinez could get the pitch to the right and throw about 5 passes?
You know what? That should be in the package, Ralph. In fact, me and you should go as head coach and offensive coordinator, and we'll go beat Baylor ourselves.
I like that guy, Deuce Vaughn. He's fun to watch, man. But unfortunately, guys, for my best bet, I'm going up against him. I think this Baylor Bears team has been underrated. They have been underrated the last 3 weeks, winning and cashing all 3 ever since. Remember the Thursday night game on the road against West Virginia? They were winning, I know, because I was betting on them. And then a cheap shot against their quarterback, Shapen. He went out.
Right.
They ended up losing that game. But sure enough, since he's been back, Baylor has been a absolute bet on team, and I'm riding that train again. I'm not jumping off, guys. Baylor -2.5 in Waco, Saturday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock local time. Kansas State, I know that they beat out Oklahoma State, looked flashy, 48-0, I believe, but they actually lost 3 of their last 4 against the spread. So kind of trend is your friend thought to this, and Baylor really being underrated. I wouldn't be surprised if Baylor kind of beats Kansas State, beats Texas, gets into the Big 12 championship game, and who knows, maybe knocks TCU out of the playoffs. All could be ahead of them. But Baylor -2.5, my best bet for the show. Go around the horn here. Best bets and final thoughts. Ralph Michaels at Cal Sports LV. Guys, remember, he's got his 5% play up. If you're watching live in the NHL, knows his college football, obviously. Ralph, final thoughts, best bet for the show, buddy.
Well, as I mentioned, Georgia, no question, would be a best bet. But since I gave them out on yesterday's college football show, if you're watching both days, I don't want to repeat. I'm going to go off the board and go to Florida State. The Seminoles, to me, are one of the most impressive teams. Yes, they have 3 losses. But if you look at their stat profile from the Wager Talk stat guide that I do each week, they've played the number 39 schedule. So it's not a top 10 SEC schedule or, some of the Pac-12 teams. But it's stronger than Syracuse. They're plus 175 yards per game. That is number 6th best in the country. You don't perceive Florida State as one of those 6th best teams. Yards per play diff, taking what they average on offense, what they average on defense. They're number 9 on offense, 7.01 yards per play. They're number 11 on defense, 4.73 yards per play allowed. That diff plus 2.28 is number 5 in the country. Now, Syracuse offense has been horrendous, but you got to remember, Schrader got hurt in the Notre Dame game where they only gained 286 yards, and then he was out against Pittsburgh where they gained 145. Schrader's back this week, so I'm not saying that I can look at those numbers, but I look at what Syracuse has done, and they're one of the most fake teams to me. You beat Louisville early. We've seen Louisville's a much better team now, but they weren't there. They were plus 3 turnovers. You beat UConn, not impressed. You beat Purdue. You were outgained by 179 yards, and you won that late. Virginia by 2, not impressed. Wagner, not impressed. NC State was without their quarterback. And then what happens? Clemson shuts you down. Notre Dame shuts you down. Pittsburgh shuts you down. I think Florida State is in a great position. You still have a building program with Norville in his 3rd year. You look at their losses. Both teams lost to Clemson. Florida State lost at NC State and then lost to Wake Forest, where they were only outgained by 10 yards. So I think Florida State takes care of business. We saw what they did against Miami of Florida last week. They had 642 yards against Georgia Tech. Jordan Travis absolutely lighting it up. 17-4 ratio, a rush attack that's averaging 5.5 yards per carry. And Syracuse, 3 weeks ago at 6-0, they're thinking, well, we do this. We got Clemson coming in. We're going to be in the ACC title game. Takes a lot to keep that team motivated with 3 straight losses. And now you have Florida State and Wake Forest on deck. Give me the Florida State Seminoles.
Going with the Noles for Ralph Michaels. We got at Rob Veno Sports on Twitter. Rob Veno, check him out. Wagertalk.com is 4% plays like we went over, guys. 14-3, 82% run. NFL doing very well, and number 1 in NBA in both 2019 and 2020. So if you're looking for an NBA handicapper, he's your guy. He knows his college football. Robbie, final thoughts, best bet for the show?
Yeah, I'll take a different game, Drew. Again, the game that you're on, I like the side that you're on. I like the total in that game to get up and over. But I'll go back to Purdue and Illinois and what I think will be a field goal game at best, and where I think that the points are just a little bit too heavy here, 6.5. To me, Illinois' got a couple of good running backs, but Purdue's got the playmakers on their side. I mean, they've got an NFL wide receiver in Charlie Jones. They've got an NFL tight end in Payne Durham. They've got a number 2 wide receiver in TJ Sheffield. They've got a lot of playmakers, and their quarterback, Aiden O'Connell, in these types of games, usually very, very close as far as competition is concerned. They're a very competitive football team. I don't trust Illinois. Ralph talked about Syracuse being a little bit phony, and maybe I'll be proven wrong here. But Illinois has shown the only time they played a halfway decent pass offense, halfway, in Indiana, they gave up 330 yards and lost the game. So to me, Purdue, Aiden O'Connell's arm is strong enough to cut through anything less than 20-mile-an-hour winds. You play half the game going with the wind anyways. So I'm going to take Purdue here, plus 6.5 in a very, very meaningful game in the Big Ten West. I think it will be no more than a field goal either side. Illinois, I expect to be motivated off the loss last week, but I just don't think they're good enough at this point in time for me to go give them 6.5, and I trust Jeff Brom and the Purdue team to stay close.
Heard it there from Rob Veno, Ralph Michaels as well. Huge shout out to the chat box again. Brown in the house, RJ, Rashad saying any reason why Maction games not being discussed and broke down. We'll be breaking down Saturday games usually on the Best Damn College Football Show. We actually did the Every Game on the Board podcast just about 30 minutes ago with Mid-Major Matt. We broke those down for tonight's game. They'll be uploaded on the Wager Talk YouTube channel. You can also go watch it right now, Rashad, on Twitter at Drew Martin Bets. Robbie Veno will be on tomorrow. So something to look out there, guys. Every game on the board in college football. Best damn college football show right here each and every Wednesday, 3 o'clock Eastern time. We got Baylor minus 2.5 for my best bet. We got Ralph, Florida State plus the 6 in the hook up against Syracuse, going down to Miami, Florida, up to Syracuse, New York. Doesn't matter, travel. Taking it against Syracuse. Purdue plus 6.5 as the underdog. For Ralph Michaels, Rob Veno, I'm Drew Martin. Pens up, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Please smash that like button. Cash those tickets.
Ready to take your favorite Wager Talk handicappers wherever you travel this football season? The Wager Talk TV app is now live for phones, tablets, smart TVs, and streaming platforms. Tune into your favorite shows like Wager Talk Today, Bet on It, and the Opening Line Report. Plus, browse through our extensive library of sports betting tips. Create your personal playlist of betting tip videos to help you prepare for the upcoming season, and set notifications to alert you when new content is added. Download the app for Apple, Android, Amazon, and Roku devices by searching for Wager Talk TV, or scan the QR code on your screen to join the winning conversation today.